Lewis Hamilton just won his first race for Ferrari. But what he said after the checkered flag is the part nobody can ignore. Because this was not just a thank you. This was Hamilton admitting that last year, the Ferrari dream almost broke him. He said he nearly lost hope. He thanked Fred Vasseur for believing in him. He thanked Maranello for helping him achieve a dream. And in that moment, the most powerful driver move in Formula One stopped looking like a gamble and started looking like destiny. Think about what had to happen for this moment to exist. Hamilton went 686 days without a win. Mercedes had pole position. Kimi Antonelli had won 5 races in a row. Ferrari's entire race depended on one perfect strategy call. And with only a few laps left, everything could still collapse. Then Hamilton crossed the line, his voice broke on the radio, and the words he gave Ferrari sounded bigger than victory itself. Because Barcelona did not just give Hamilton a trophy. It gave Vasseur proof that his riskiest decision was right. And once you hear what Hamilton really said after winning in red, you understand why this race may have changed Ferrari forever. Subscribe to the channel. Before Barcelona, the world saw Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari as one of two things. Either it was going to become the most emotional final chapter of his career, or it was going to become the mistake people whispered about for years. There was almost no space in between. That is what happens when a 7-time world champion leaves the team where he built an empire and walks into the most demanding garage in Formula One. Hamilton did not leave Mercedes as an ordinary driver looking for a fresh start. He left as the face of an era. 12 years, 6 world championships, the majority of his record-breaking victories. The silver car, the familiar voices, the people who knew exactly how he wanted the car to feel before he even finished explaining it. That kind of history does not disappear when a contract ends. It follows you. And when Hamilton put on Ferrari red, he did not just change colors. He changed the emotional weight of every race weekend. Because Ferrari is different. At Ferrari, hope is louder. Pain is louder. Criticism is louder. Even silence feels louder. A bad qualifying session is not just a bad qualifying session. It becomes a debate about the driver, the car, the team principle, the factory, and whether the dream was ever realistic in the first place. Hamilton knew that. Fred Vasseur knew that too. And that is why this partnership was always about more than speed. Vasseur was not simply signing a driver. He was signing the most famous active champion in the sport and asking the entire world to believe that Ferrari could give him one more mountain to climb. That is a dangerous promise. Because if it works, it becomes history. But if it fails, it becomes a symbol of everything people think Ferrari gets wrong. Too much emotion, too much pressure, too much expectation, too many dreams turning into frustration. And for a while, the critics had evidence. Hamilton's first season in red was painful. The car was not the weapon he needed. The connection never fully arrived. The results did not match the size of the move. Instead of immediate glory, Ferrari gave him weekends filled with compromise, confusion, and questions that became harder to avoid. Was the car wrong for him? Was the team still too far away? Had Mercedes moved on at exactly the right time? Had Hamilton walked into the dream after the dream had already expired? Those questions followed him everywhere. And the cruelest part was that every weekend gave them more oxygen. When Hamilton struggled, people did not treat it like a normal adjustment period. They treated it like a verdict. A driver of his level does not get the privacy of patience. Every missed podium becomes evidence. Every difficult radio message becomes a headline. Every uncomfortable session becomes part of the story that maybe, just maybe, the great Ferrari gamble was failing. But inside that struggle, there was something the outside world could not fully see. Hamilton was not only fighting rivals. He was fighting the feeling that the car underneath him did not speak his language. That matters more than casual fans sometimes realize. A Formula One car is not just fast or slow. It either gives the driver trust or it takes trust away. It either tells the driver where the limit is or it hides the limit until it is too late. It either lets the driver attack or forces him to hesitate. And hesitation is poison at this level. For Hamilton, the old Ferrari did not give him the natural confidence he had built his career around. The balance was not there. The response was not there. The sense that he could lean on the car and feel it catch him was not there. So every lap became work. Not the good kind of work. The kind that drains a driver because he's spending energy just trying to understand what the car will do next. That is why his later admission was so powerful. He said last year felt like a dream that was nearly unattainable. He said he almost lost hope. Those words matter because champions do not usually talk like that unless the feeling was real. They protect themselves. They protect the team. They protect the message. They say the car is difficult, but the team is pushing. They say the weekend was tough, but there are positives. They say they will keep working. Almost lost hope is different. Almost lost hope means the dream had started to look like it might never happen. And that is where Fred Vasseur's role becomes central. Because belief is easy when the car is winning. Belief is cheap when the podiums are already there. The difficult kind of belief is the kind that stays when the project looks wounded. The kind that survives public pressure. The kind that keeps telling a driver the story is not finished, even when the results are not yet strong enough to prove it. Vasseur had to be that person, not with slogans, with decisions, with support, with changes, with the courage to keep backing Hamilton when the outside noise was building. And Hamilton did not forget that. That is why, after the win, he did not treat Vasseur like a background figure. He named him. He thanked him. He connected the victory directly to the belief that brought him to Ferrari in the first place. That is why the words landed so hard. Because they were not just gratitude. They were recognition. Hamilton was saying, "You believed before the proof existed." And in Formula One, that is one of the biggest risks anyone can take. But Barcelona did not arrive as a gentle reward. It arrived as another test. Because while Ferrari was trying to rebuild Hamilton's dream, Mercedes was already writing a new one without him. Kimi Antonelli had become the shock of the season. 19 years old, driving the seat Hamilton had left behind and already winning like he had no intention of waiting his turn. 5 consecutive victories before Barcelona. A championship lead that made the paddock feel like a generational shift might be happening in real time. That made Hamilton's situation even more painful. Because every Antonelli win sharpened the comparison. The young driver in Hamilton's old team was rising. The legendary driver in Ferrari Red was still waiting. That is a brutal mirror. And Formula One loves brutal mirrors. It loves putting the past and the future on the same straight. It loves asking whether legacy can still fight momentum. It loves turning career decisions into public judgment. So when the paddock arrived in Barcelona, the emotional stakes were enormous. This was not only a race. It was a trial of the entire Hamilton-Ferrari project. Mercedes looked powerful. Antonelli looked unstoppable. George Russell put Mercedes on pole position. Hamilton started second. Antonelli started third. Ferrari had a front-row presence, yes, but not control. And that distinction is everything. Starting second means the win is visible, but not yours. You can see the leader. You can measure the gap. You can feel the possibility. But the first move belongs to someone else. For Hamilton, that someone else was Russell, a Mercedes driver. In the team Hamilton had left, behind him was Antonelli, another Mercedes driver, the teenager leading the championship. So Hamilton was physically placed between the past he had walked away from and the future trying to replace him. That image alone tells you why the race felt so loaded. Ferrari had one car in the fight because Charles Leclerc's weekend had already been damaged by a crash in the final part of qualifying, and later his race would end with a reported power steering problem. That left Hamilton carrying Ferrari's hope almost alone. And when a Ferrari driver carries hope alone, the pressure becomes heavier than the steering wheel. Because every strategic call, every pit stop, every tire decision, every radio message begins to feel like it belongs to the whole company, not just the driver. That is what Barcelona was asking from Hamilton. Not just speed, control, not just confidence, patience, not just emotion, precision. And that is why the early part of the race mattered more than it looked. Russell led away from pole. Hamilton stayed close. Antonelli ran behind. Nothing exploded. Nothing dramatic happened immediately. But Hamilton had done the first essential thing. He had kept the race alive. He had not been swallowed by the 2 Mercedes cars. He had not overreached in the opening corner. He had not let the dream collapse before Ferrari could even use its strategy. And from the opening phase, Ferrari understood the real battle. Tire management. That phrase can sound small, but it was the spine of the entire race. Hamilton had to drive fast enough to keep pressure on Russell, but calmly enough to protect the tires for later. He had to fight but not burn. He had to chase but not panic. Think of it like carrying a flame through wind. Move too slowly, and you never reach the place you need to go. Move too violently, and the flame dies in your own hands. Hamilton had to keep that flame alive. And this was where the new Ferrari began to show why the dream had not died. The car was finally allowing him to do the one thing he had missed most. Feel. He could manage the tires. He could stay close. He could respond to the balance. He could drive with the kind of emotional control that only appears when the machine underneath you gives something back. That was not a headline moment, but it was the foundation of the win. Because the final radio message, the podium words, the thanks to Vasseur, the emotion at Maranello, none of it happens if Hamilton cannot keep the car in the fight during those quiet, tense early laps. The victory was not born at the finish line. It was built in restraint, and that is what made the race so powerful. Hamilton did not win by pretending the pressure was not there. He won by carrying it without letting it distort the driving. He knew what the day could mean. He knew how long Ferrari had waited. He knew what Vasseur had risked. He knew what his own words after the race would reveal, even before he spoke them. But he could not let any of that decide the breaking point. That is the loneliness of a driver in a moment like this. Thousands of people are watching. Millions are judging. A whole team is hoping. A team principal's vision is hanging in the air. And still, inside the cockpit, the driver is alone with the tires, the steering, the engine, and the next corner. Hamilton had to make the impossible feel quiet. That was block one of the story. Not the win, not the tears, not the radio message, the wait before the release. Because before Hamilton could thank Vasseur for believing in him, he had to survive the part of the race where belief was still being tested. And Barcelona was only getting started. Then Ferrari reached the part of the race where belief was no longer enough. It had to become action. Because for all the emotion around Hamilton, for all the weight of his first Ferrari win waiting somewhere in the distance, Barcelona was still being controlled by Mercedes. George Russell had the lead. Kimi Antonelli was still a threat. Hamilton was close, but close does not win a Grand Prix by itself. That is the brutal truth. In Formula One, being near the front can be even more painful than being nowhere. You can see the victory. You can feel it. You can measure it in seconds. But unless the race gives you a way through, it stays just out of reach.